So before we get into the review about Alien Romulus, I just want to express my deep and total disappointment. I was really hyped. It's been a long week at work. I wanted to see a movie. I wanted some popcorn. I wanted to unwind. And so I got my ticket a couple days in advance. I came here to see Borderlands. And I was really hyped to see Borderlands. I got the popcorn bucket. I went to Toys R Us and I got the merch. That game series connected with me on a spiritual level. And I got here and the man said, "No, sir, you aren't allowed to see Borderlands. We oversold it. There's lines around the block. It's the biggest movie of the decade. You can't see Borderlands. You have to go see Alien Romulus." I'm like, who would want to see Alien Romulus? Who would want to see a movie from a mostly good franchise directed by a competent horror director who made Don't Breathe? I don't want to do that. I want to watch the unnecessary Reddit movie that's been in development hell for a decade with characters played by actors who are 30 to 40 years older than them. I want to watch that. I don't want to watch a new Alien movie. They're like, "Sorry, sir, you're going to have to watch Alien Romulus." And I'm like, fine, I guess I'll watch Alien Romulus. So, opening bit aside, this is a movie that just kind of snuck up on me. I don't recall seeing a trailer for it. I haven't really seen any ads for it. I haven't seen any buzz about this at all. It just kind of, I found out that it was coming out a week or two ago, and I'm just like, there's a new Alien movie? There hasn't been one since Covenant. It's just kind of a random time, but I looked at it and I'm like, you know what? I might go see this. There hasn't really been much playing lately, and I just like going to see movies. So I was looking into it a bit, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is done by the director of Don't Breathe. Okay, that's good. That's a movie that's very similar to Alien in a lot of ways, like a suspense horror film. So I'm like, okay, this could be good. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe it's time to revisit this franchise. I haven't watched Alien and Aliens in 15 years, so I might as well. So I rewatched the original Alien, and I rewatched Aliens. I gotta say, they're a lot better than I remember them being. I think it's a bit more like Blade Runner, where it's something I appreciate a bit more now that I'm older than I did when I was watching them when I was a kid. Just, they can be a bit slow in parts, and I can just kind of appreciate that and the attention to detail. But I specifically watched just the first two because that's all I had time for, and this film was supposed to kind of be a return to the original format. This was, the films are getting too far away from what they were originally supposed to be, with the engineers and Prometheus and Covenant and David and all that kind of weird stuff. They just wanted to get back to science fiction survival horror. And so this was supposed to be kind of a mixture of Alien and Aliens, where the first half was going to be really slow and suspenseful and creepy like Alien, and then the second half was going to be high octane action like Aliens. And you know what, that sounds pretty good. So I'm kind of happy I went into this having watched the first two movies, because there's a lot of references, lines they take, the one robot, Andy says, "I prefer the term artificial person," or "get away from her, you bitch," and just there's a lot of little references to it. But I think they did just enough. They didn't do what some things do, where they try to rely entirely on nostalgia to try to make people like what's otherwise a bad movie. So now that I beat around the bush enough, I guess the question you're all wondering is, was the movie any good? Was it a worthy addition to the Alien franchise? I'm going to have to say, yeah, it definitely, I thought, was a pretty good movie on the whole. I was definitely entertained. I was on the edge of my seat. A lot of stuff happened that I wasn't expecting. It was a pretty good mixture of formula and new stuff. A lot of it having recently seen the original Alien and how low budget it was and how much they had to just kind of make do with the technology of the time. This feels a bit more like if Ridley Scott maybe had the technology and money back then, he might have done some of this stuff. And that's pretty cool, but I think it does a good job of honoring the canon of Alien, making references to the other movies, and showing it respect without being just kind of entrapped by it. Like, we get a reference to Prometheus in this. We get a reference to Alien. There's references to Aliens, even though this doesn't take place. So on the whole, I think it does a pretty good job of capturing the feel of the original movies, albeit with a much higher budget and much more modern technology. And you might not like how slick it looks now or something like that, but I definitely think compared to Covenant and even Prometheus, this is definitely an upgrade. This felt a lot more like an Alien movie. So what is the premise of Alien Romulus? So it takes place in between Alien 1 and in between Alien and Aliens. In kind of the time period in between. At the beginning of the movie, we see them searching, Weyland Yutani searching through the asteroid field that Ripley jettisoned the alien out into in the first movie, and they manage to find it and bring it on their research station, Romulus, hence where the title comes from. So I mean, off the bat, in the first 5 minutes, we have Romulus and we have an alien. So I can safely say that the movie didn't lie to me. And that's always a good place to start when you're going to watch a film, that its title isn't completely unrelated. So they're in orbit over a colony, and like all colonies in the future, it's just it's just shitty. It's a mining settlement. It's a company town that's owned by Weyland Yutani. The main character we have is Rain. Apparently they're big fans of the channel, and they decided to name their main character after my cat, so it's kind of an honor, to be honest. But main character's Rain. So her parents died in, I forget if it was a mining accident or due to illness or something, but she's been working as a farmer, and she's worked off her contract, and she's able now to go move to a nicer planet, because this planet is a dump that the sun never shines on. You never see the sun. Everybody's dying of mine gases and diseases, and they live in squalor. She thinks she can get off, and then it turns out that Weyland just decided to double her contract. It's kind of like that scene in Battlefield Earth where they go, with endless options for renewal. It's a bit like that. So she's kind of getting desperate. She has to get off the planet. We're introduced to her. She calls him her brother Andy, who is a discarded android, who has I don't know if it's his software or his processor or whatever doesn't work particularly well. So he kind of acts like a child with learning disabilities. He does not go full retard, though. He gets close, but he doesn't go completely full retard. So she meets up with some of her friends, and they talk about how they've got a ship, and they want to just escape the planet, because otherwise they're eventually just going to die in this cesspit. Weyland is just going to keep extending their contracts indefinitely. So it's time to get out of there. And they found out that there is this decommissioned space station, Romulus, that's orbiting the planet, and is going to crash into it. And they find out that there's 5 hypersleep pods on it. So what they're going to do is they're going to go to Romulus. They're going to scavenge the hypersleep pods, and then they're going to take the ship and go to the colony that Rain was trying to go to in the first place. So you have, I think, a lot of just good set pieces. A lot of things that are just very alien-ish. You've got the dystopian future. You have the shitty planet that's barely been terraformed. You have the desperate wage slave who's in debt to the company. You have an android. You have a creepy decommissioned space station. You have some sort of shady bioweapons program. You have a lot of just inherently alien stuff there, and that's already, I think, a good sign. I was like, okay, you know what? This is pretty good so far. This actually feels like it's set in the alien universe. It's kind of cool to see a little bit outside of the space station, and just to see that kind of most of Earth is just, or most of humanity just kind of lives in filth. So they can get onto the station because Andy is a Weyland-Yutani android, so he will have clearance. So they go into the station, they find that it's completely destroyed. There's a massive hole that goes through the floor all the way down. They aren't really sure what it is, although we, the audience, know it's obviously someone killed an alien and the acid blood ate all the way through the ship. And what's kind of unexpected is they actually managed to get the hypersleep pods in like the first 5-10 minutes on the spaceship. However, it turns out they don't have enough fuel. So they need to go to the cryo lab to get fuel to power up the pods. Now, they get there and they take out the fuel. However, the fuel was keeping all of the alien specimens on ice. So they open it up and that immediately starts defrosting them. And then they start getting attacked, and one of the girls gets impregnated by the face hugger. There's just a bunch of stuff that happens. We're introduced to Rook, who's kind of our sort of villain, who's a Weyland-Yutani android who got mostly destroyed, but they managed to hook him up to the station's controls. So he's able to talk again, and he explains to them how they brought the alien on board to study it, and how it killed the entire crew, or most of the crew. The security officers shot the alien, however that triggered explosive decompression, and the whole thing's just kind of been on lockdown. Now, I think the face huggers go and impregnate all of the various corpses on the station and start spawning for that. I can't recall if they require a living host or not. I was a little confused to where all the xenomorphs came from later, if that was because they were like already there, or if they were made from the various corpses. It's not important, but interestingly, what they do is they take one of the part of the disc out of Rook's brain and put it into Andy, and it fixes his AI. So he gains his full kind of sentience, or however you want to put it, full use of all his abilities as an android and his intelligence. However, it overwrites his programming and it makes him a Weyland-Yutani drone again. So his new mission from Rook is to get the samples off the station. Apparently Rook was able to synthesize this distilled alien DNA, which he calls the secret of immortality, or Prometheus. And apparently if you inject a human with it, it gives them all the abilities of a xenomorph. It makes them super strong. It makes them immortal. It gives them instant regeneration. It shows a clip of a mouse that they injected in, a dead mouse that they injected in, and it completely recovers itself. And so he talks to Andy, and they kind of come up with this scheme that they're going to try to get the sample off and back to the colony, and then Weyland is going to send a ship in a couple months to come pick it up. So, as I said, the one girl got impregnated, or however you put it, by the face hugger. So Andy tries to stop her from going on the ship. So there's the 5 humans. 3 of them make it back on the ship. They, however, shut the airlock and they prevent the other 2 from getting on, including Rain. Also, some other dude, I forget his name, and then Andy is also there. Now, obviously, the girl who got impregnated with the alien winds up impregnated with the alien, and we get a chest burster that kills one of the other members of the crew. However, the third person survives, who interestingly enough is pregnant, which becomes important later on. So they crash the ship. However, they get lucky and the ship winds up going into the docking bay of the Romulus, so they can still get to it. This has a very Dead Space feel to me. Now, I get it that obviously it's going to, because Dead Space is very heavily inspired by Alien, but just like them trying to turn on different parts of the space station to try to get to the other part of it, then trying to get to the ship so they can get off. It just reminded me a lot of Dead Space, but in a good way, because I like Dead Space. So maybe it's a case where it actually did influence it a bit, and you had a case where Dead Space was influenced by Alien, and then the new Alien movie took some cues from Dead Space. So that would be pretty cool. I'd be happy with that, to be honest. But yeah, so that ship crashes. The pregnant girl actually manages to escape the xenomorph that's on the ship. We have kind of a cool scene where Andy explains to us, and I'm sure it was probably explained in a previous movie, I just don't remember, that the face huggers are blind, but they can sense heat, and that's how they track their prey is through sound, but mainly through heat. So they turn up the room temperature, and they have to get past a bunch of them, and they turn up the temperature in the room to body temperature, so the face huggers can't see them, which I actually thought was a pretty cool idea. And they managed to get through it. They managed to get to the other side. I'm just kind of abridging some of this. Get to the other side of the station. There's a lot of like really good horror scenes. I'm just trying to condense because it's kind of hard to describe specific scenes. They get to like the docking bay, and they're not able to, and they come across the pregnant girl. Now Andy can see that there is a xenomorph hiding on the ceiling waiting for them to open the door to let her out, and so he refuses to do that, and she gets stabbed and taken away, presumably to be another host. So a bunch of other stuff happens. They wind up going through the whole area to get to the location. They get the Prometheus or Promethium, or whatever you want to call it, immortality serum, and they start leaving with it. However, when they're leaving, they find the only exit is through an alien hive. We have kind of a cool scene where they find some pulse rifles from aliens. They reference the colonial marines, and we have kind of a scene similar to when Corporal what's-his-name shows Ripley how to use the pulse rifle in Aliens, which was kind of a cool throwback. They can't really use the guns, though, because alien acid is blood, and if they kill an alien, it'll burn through the hull of the ship and cause explosive decompression. Now, I find in these movies they're very inconsistent with the alien's blood. Sometimes it's acid, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it burns through everything, sometimes it doesn't. I just find it very, very inconsistent in general. So they go down the hive corridor. They find the pregnant girl. She's still alive. They haven't re-impregnated her yet because she has lost too much blood and she's too weak. So maybe they're going to eat her or something. But they managed to save her. They managed to get to an elevator. They give her the Prometheus samples to take onto the ship. Andy, however, falls over, and Rain decides to go back to save her friend. The other guy gets killed. Kind of a cool scene. He gets eaten by a bunch of xenomorphs. Turns out that there's like dozens of them. So they send the pregnant girl up to the ship. Rook has locked down the station, and he will not let them leave until they agree to take the samples with them and have the samples go to the colony so Weyland-Yutani can collect them. Now, Andy suggests, while he's still being controlled by the programming, that one way they could save the pregnant girl is to inject her with the promethium, because that will regenerate her. So after they leave, because she's very badly wounded, Rain, however, is smart enough to go, that's probably a really bad idea. So we'll just put her into cryostasis, and that'll prevent her from dying. And then when we get to the location, we can get her medical treatment there. I don't think it's a good idea to inject her with stuff that comes with black fluid that comes from a xenomorph that was made by a crazy android. She, however, immediately injects herself with it because why not, and makes it to the ship, but refuses to turn on the autopilot and let Rook pilot it out until her friends get there. So we get a cool series of action scenes where she manages to take the chip out of Andy, so it's fixed him, but he doesn't have the programming anymore that makes him a Weyland-Yutani slave. And so they're still stuck in the hive, though. So like, well, how are we going to get out? We have a gun, but we can't shoot the aliens. So they turn on 0G so that the aliens' blood will not go through the floor. So we get a really cool scene where apparently the pulse rifles have like auto aim. So she kills like 20 xenomorphs or something just with the auto aim on the pulse rifle, and like the acid blood's all spinning around. And then we get a cool scene where she has to like try to climb through the acid blood to get to the other side. And then just we get some other cool stuff. They have to try to get out of the like the shaft in the center of the space station. And we have like the gravity flipping off and on, and we have a bunch of xenomorphs like coming up the shaft after them, and it's just a really cool scene. A lot of creative stuff with the pulse rifle. It reminded me a lot of just scenes from Aliens. And then they managed to make it eventually to the ship and trigger the autopilot so they can get away. Now they put the pregnant girl into the cryosleep pod. And Andy gets hooked up to the computer, so that it looks like they're going to set off for the nice planet. Everything got resolved. However, it turns out that injecting yourself with something made from a black fluid made from a xenomorph created by a mad scientist android was probably a bad idea. So it corrupts her baby, so we get kind of an inverse of the alien from Alien 4, whereas this one looks primarily human with alien characteristics instead of alien with human characteristics. So so we have kind of a gory scene where she gives birth to it. So it's this just really tall, creepy-looking creature that's mostly human. It kind of looks like Slender Man, or something like that. Like just this big monster that has a whole bunch of alien characteristics. I think it has acid blood and stuff like that. And Andy tries to stop it, and it cuts him, kind of like how Bishop gets cut in Aliens. And then it goes back and eats its mother or something like that. So Rain is now alone. She has to figure it the fuck out. The acid blood from the birth burns a hole through the bottom of the cargo door, so that turns off the autopilot. So they turn off the autopilot, so they're trying to get away from the like sinking station. They manage to get away from it, but the station is above the rings of the shitty mining planet. So we all get all these really cool external shots of like the ship slowly getting sucked towards the rings. Gravity's gradually pulling it down. Autopilot is turned off, so there's only a couple minutes before the ship hits it. And then we get a bunch of scenes that are very reminiscent of the end of the first Alien movie, where the ship gets depressurized, it gets super cold. We have our Rain gets into a spacesuit, manages to put it on just in time. She succeeds in depressurizing the hull of the cargo bay, which sucks the alien out into space. The alien-human hybrid out into space. We get kind of a cool scene where we think it's gone, but it's still there, and it's like hanging on to her, but she manages to get it off. It's just a really cool scene. Once again, very reminiscent of Alien, the end of Alien, and I guess to a lesser extent the end of Aliens. She manages to survive, though. She puts Andy into a cryosleep pod and sets the ship on autopilot, as well as putting herself into cryosleep. saying that whatever happens, they'll face it together and she'll fix Andy. And so that's the end of the movie. Once again, very, very similar ending to Alien 1, but it doesn't really feel like it's ripping it off. It doesn't even feel like it's a soft reboot. It feels like it's part of the Alien franchise, but it's getting back to its survival horror roots, as opposed to just shitting on it or throwing the table over and saying we're going to reset it, or we're going to do some like awkward semi-reboot or something like that. It's a midquel, which, I mean, some people don't like midquels, but it makes sense. Like, it fits in with the timeline. We get a lot of good callbacks and references. The characters aren't as good as some of the other movies. I think like the Marines and Aliens were better. Some of the, I guess the stuff in like Prometheus was maybe better, but on the whole, this is one very solid sci-fi horror action movie, and I'd probably recommend seeing it. Good movie. If you want more aliens, then definitely this is a winner. So that's the review. God bless everybody and have a great evening.